My name is Caroline Hayes. I'm 28 years old, and if you ask anyone who knows me, they'll tell you I've been obsessed with classic cars since I was a kid. For 5 straight years, I worked 70-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and pinched every penny just to afford the one thing I had dreamed of since childhood, a pristine 1969 Corvette Stingray. The day I finally bought it felt like I had touched a piece of magic. But here's the twist. While I thought my biggest worry would be thieves or weather damage, I never imagined my own family would betray me. When I came back from a business trip and asked where my car was, my mom actually smirked and said, "Thanks to your car, your sister is having the time of her life." At first, I laughed in disbelief, and that's when she snapped. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had family members treat your possessions like they were theirs, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you're going to want to see how this all played out. My love affair with cars began when I was just 7 years old. While most kids spent Saturday mornings glued to cartoons, my grandfather, Henry, would rumble down the street in his old pickup truck and scoop me up for a day in his garage. That garage wasn't just a workshop, it was a cathedral. The smell of oil, the clink of tools, the gleam of polished chrome. It all felt like stepping into another world. Grandpa Henry didn't just restore cars, he treated them like living beings. "Cars have souls, Caroline," he'd say, handing me a wrench twice the size of my hand. "They'll talk to you if you learn how to listen." And I believed him, especially the day he pulled the cover off his prized possession, a 1969 Corvette Stingray in rally red. The way the light slid across those curves, the low growl of the engine. It was love at first sight. That very moment, I whispered a promise to myself. One day, I'll own one just like this. But here's the problem. My parents, Richard and Elaine, never understood. My mom would wrinkle her nose at the grease under my fingernails. My dad would shake his head, muttering about how I should be more like my little sister, Emily. Emily, 4 years younger, delicate, graceful, the golden child. She got ballet lessons, designer clothes, and the sweet 16 party of her dreams. Me? I got hand-me-downs, a cupcake with a candle, and lectures about being too practical. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister. But growing up in her shadow was like being the background character in my own family's story. That's when I made another vow. If no one else believed in me, I would believe in myself. When I finally left home for college, I knew one thing. If I wanted my dream life, I'd have to build it myself. While Emily was busy posting photos of her new dance shoes and beach trips with friends, I was pulling triple shifts. Mornings in the campus cafe, afternoons in the library as a tutor, nights stocking shelves at a grocery store. All while keeping a 4.0 GPA in finance. It wasn't easy. My hands blistered, my back ached, and sometimes I wondered if the exhaustion would ever end. But I had one image that kept me going, that red Corvette. After graduation, I landed a brutal but prestigious job at an investment bank in Chicago. The hours? Forget about it, 70 plus a week, minimum. But I lived like a monk. No designer clothes, no fancy trips, just roommates and ramen noodles. Every extra dollar went into a separate account marked with one word, Stingray. For 5 years I said no to parties, no to shopping sprees, no to living like the people around me. And then one night, scrolling through an online auction, my heart nearly stopped. There it was. A 1969 Corvette Stingray in rally red, the twin of my grandfather's. The seller? A collector in Wisconsin downsizing his fleet. The price? $85,000. Exactly the amount I had saved. The day I drove it home, tears rolled down my cheeks. For the first time, I felt like my grandfather was sitting right there beside me, his hand on my shoulder, whispering, "We did it." That car wasn't just metal and leather. It was proof that sacrifice pays off, that I wasn't crazy for believing in myself. It was my independence, my childhood promise, and my connection to the only man who ever truly understood my passion. And little did I know, that very car would soon become the weapon my family used to betray me. 6 months after I bought the Corvette, I met Ryan at, of all places, a classic car show on the outskirts of Chicago. He wasn't flashy, just a quiet guy with grease under his nails and a genuine smile. And the kicker? He owned a replica Stingray. It wasn't the real deal, but it made for the perfect icebreaker. We spent the whole afternoon swapping stories about engines, auctions, and the thrill of restoring old metal into something alive again. Unlike my parents, Ryan got it. He understood why I'd rather spend a Saturday changing oil than shopping at the mall. For the next 2 years, that Corvette became our world. I babied it, only drove it in perfect weather, never through a Chicago winter. It wasn't just a car, it was a living memory of Grandpa Henry, and Ryan respected that. Then came the call that changed everything. One Tuesday afternoon, my boss, Veronica Steele, the kind of woman who scared half the office with just a look, called me into her office. "Caroline," she said, leaning back in her chair, "how's your Japanese?" I blinked. Conversational at best. 3 years in college. She smiled. Good enough. Pack your bags. You're going to Tokyo. You'll lead the pitch for Patterson Financial. Patterson wasn't just any client. They were worth millions. If I landed this, it meant promotion. Maybe even a vice president title. But while my coworkers celebrated for me, I was already thinking about one thing: my Corvette. 3 weeks overseas. 3 weeks away from my pride and joy. Chicago had been hit with a rash of car break-ins recently, and leaving it on the street felt like begging for trouble. So I made a choice. I drove it to my parents' suburban house in Evanston, tucked it neatly into their garage, and gave my dad detailed instructions. Start it once a week, let it run for 15 minutes. Don't drive it. Use this cover. And please, don't let anyone else near it. He patted the hood and smiled. Caroline, I'll treat it like gold. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But that night at dinner, as my sister Emily complained about not being able to afford a vacation while her friends were planning cruises, I should have known. I should have seen the storm forming. Because when I boarded that plane to Tokyo, I had no idea I was handing my family the very weapon they would use to betray me. Tokyo was everything I'd hoped for, and more. The skyscrapers glittered at night, the boardrooms buzzed with sharp suits and sharper negotiations, and when I walked into Patterson Financial's offices, I knew this was my moment. For 3 weeks, I barely slept. Meetings, translations, presentations. And when we finally landed the deal, a contract worth $12 million, my boss clinked her glass at the celebratory dinner and said with a smirk, "Vice President Hayes has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" I was floating. My career dreams were unfolding faster than I could believe. But in the middle of my euphoria, something tugged at me, the thought of my Corvette sitting in my parents' garage. Mom's texts during my trip had started to sound odd. "We have a big surprise waiting when you get home," one message read. I shrugged it off, imagining balloons or a dinner. Never once did I imagine the truth. The day my plane touched down at O'Hare, the sun was shining. I was exhausted, jet-lagged, but my heart was racing. In just a few hours, I'd be back behind the wheel of my Stingray, wind in my hair, Lake Michigan on the horizon. Ryan texted, "Just pulled up. Can't wait to swap the cars back." The taxi turned into my parents' driveway. I leaned forward eagerly, then froze. The garage door was wide open. My dad's sedan sat there. My mom's SUV. But no Corvette. I felt my stomach drop. My pulse spiked. Dragging my suitcase up the walk, I forced a smile as my mom opened the door, her arms spread wide. Caroline. Welcome home. I barely returned the hug. My voice cracked as I asked the only thing I cared about. Mom, where's my car? For a split second, something flickered across her face. Guilt? Defensiveness? Then she smoothed it over with a strange smile. Oh, sweetheart, she said, her tone almost smug. Thanks to your car, your sister Emily is having the time of her life. And right then, I knew something was horribly, irreversibly wrong. I thought maybe I misheard her. Maybe it was jet lag. But then Mom pulled out her phone and shoved it into my hands. There she was. Emily, my baby sister, posing on the deck of a Mediterranean cruise ship, cocktail in hand, designer sunglasses glinting in the sun. The caption read, "Living my best life. Blessed." My vision blurred. My throat went dry. You sold my car? The words barely left my lips, trembling. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his recliner, refusing to meet my eyes. Now, Caroline, try to understand, Emily was going through a hard time. All her friends were going on this cruise. She would have been devastated if she couldn't go. I laughed. A sharp, hollow sound. So you sold my Corvette? The car I worked 5 years to buy? The car Grandpa and I dreamed about? Mom waved her hand like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Don't be so dramatic. You make good money. You can always buy another one. But Emily? She needed this opportunity. She needed to network, to make connections. This is about her future. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down before I dropped it. That car was in my name. You had no right, none, to sell it. Dad muttered, well, technically, we told the buyer you had authorized it. My heart slammed against my ribs. You forged my signature? Mom's chin lifted defiantly. Family helps family. You'll understand one day. No, I snapped, my voice breaking, tears stinging my eyes. What you did wasn't family. It was theft. Betrayal. You didn't just sell a car, you sold me. And as I stood there trembling with rage, I realized the cruelest part. It wasn't strangers who had done this. It was my own parents. Just when I thought the betrayal couldn't cut deeper, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. Pulled up. Where's the Stingray? And in that instant, it hit me. Like lightning cracking through a storm. I started laughing. At first it was a quiet chuckle, then louder until both of my parents stared at me in confusion. What's so funny? Mom snapped, annoyed. Your sister's happiness is not a joke. I wiped my eyes, still shaking from the rush of realization. You didn't sell my car. Dad frowned. Caroline, we saw you park it here. We sold it fair and square. I raised a finger. No, Dad, you sold Ryan's replica. The color drained from their faces. Ryan walked through the door, his expression tight, arms crossed. That's right. The real Corvette? It's been safe in my garage this whole time. What you sold was my car, a replica worth 30 grand, not 85. Mom staggered back, clutching the counter. No, it looked identical. That's the point, Ryan said flatly. It was built to look the same. But mine isn't an authentic '69 Stingray. You committed fraud. You sold property that wasn't yours to sell. Dad's face turned ashen. His voice trembled. Does that mean we could go to jail? Yes, Ryan said, his voice like steel. Auto theft, wire fraud, forgery. Each carries up to 15 years. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Loud, dramatic sobs, the kind she always used when she wanted sympathy. But this time it didn't work. Because standing there, watching them crumble under the weight of what they'd done, I realized something chilling. The car wasn't the only thing they'd lost. They'd lost my trust, and that they'd never get back. Before I could even process the mess, my phone rang again, an unknown number. Is this Caroline Hayes? A man's voice asked. Yes. Who's calling? This is Peter Donovan. I just purchased a '69 Corvette Stingray from your parents on your behalf. There's a problem with the title transfer. My eyes locked on my parents. Their faces turned ghostly white. In that moment, I had a choice. Tell Donovan the truth and let my parents sink, or buy time to figure out how this all played out. Mr. Donovan, I said carefully, there's been a misunderstanding. I'll call you back shortly. When I hung up, Mom dropped to her knees, tears streaking her face. Caroline, please. We never meant for it to go this far. You can't let us go to jail. Dad's voice cracked, desperation leaking through his usual calm. We'll make it right, sweetheart. Anything. Just don't turn us in. I crossed my arms. Funny. Where was that concern when you forged my name? When you handed over Ryan's car like it was yours to sell? Mom sobbed louder. We were only helping Emily. And as if on cue, my phone lit up again. This time with a message from Aunt Sylvia. I can't believe you'd threaten your own parents over a car. They did so much for you. Shame on you, Caroline. I laughed bitterly. Of course. You've already rallied the family against me. Sure enough, Aunt Sylvia called minutes later. Caroline Marie, she snapped, using my full name like I was a child. What kind of daughter tries to put her parents in prison over a car? Family helps family. I gritted my teeth. This isn't about a car. It's about theft, forgery, and fraud. Crimes, Aunt Sylvia. Felonies. Against Ryan, not me. But she didn't care. None of them did. To them, I was ungrateful. Cole, the villain in a story where Emily's happiness excused everything. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a full-blown family war. When I hung up on Aunt Sylvia, my blood was boiling. But then I remembered someone who might finally see things clearly, Uncle George, my grandfather's brother. He'd always been the only one besides Grandpa who respected my passion for cars. I dialed his number, half dreading more judgment. But the moment I explained what had happened, his voice thundered through the line. They did what? Sold Ryan's car without permission? Caroline, that isn't just wrong, that's criminal. You have every right to be furious. Relief washed over me. For the first time all day, someone understood. Everyone else thinks I should just forgive and forget, I admitted. They keep saying, family helps family. Uncle George snorted. Family doesn't mean trampling over you. Your grandfather would have been sick to his stomach hearing this. Don't let anyone guilt you out of standing your ground. His words gave me strength. And I needed it because the next call I made was to Emily. She answered from the cruise ship, music and laughter buzzing in the background. Hey, Caroline. Why are you calling? Is something wrong? Yes, I said, my voice tight. Something's very wrong. Mom and Dad sold Ryan's car to pay for your little vacation. Silence. Then a laugh. Oh, is that all? I thought someone was sick. Look, Don't be so dramatic. You can buy another car. My jaw clenched. It wasn't my car, Emily. It was Ryan's. What they did was fraud. They could go to prison. That finally wiped the smugness from her tone. Prison? You're exaggerating. No, I snapped. You're going to cut your cruise short, get off at the next port, and come home. You don't get to sip cocktails while the rest of us clean up your mess. She sputtered. I didn't ask them to sell anything. Didn't you? I said coldly. Because Mom told me all about your whining. How you couldn't be left out. How you were so depressed about missing this cruise. That's what pushed them over the edge. You may not have signed the papers, but you lit the match. The line went quiet. I knew I'd hit a nerve. Get home, Emily, I said firmly. Because this time you're going to pay for what you've done. The next morning, Ryan and I drove out to meet Peter Donovan, the buyer who'd unknowingly gotten tangled in my parents' fraud. He was waiting for us at a coffee shop halfway between Chicago and Indianapolis, a middle-aged man in a leather jacket, car enthusiast written all over his face. When we explained the truth, his jaw tightened. So, let me get this straight, he said, leaning forward. I paid $50,000 for a car that wasn't even yours to sell? Technically, yes, I admitted. But we want to make it right. Ryan nodded. We'll refund every dollar plus an additional $5,000 for the inconvenience. Donovan's glare softened, but only slightly. And the car? It's mine, Ryan said flatly. Legally and by registration. I'll need it back once the money's wired to you. After tense silence, Donovan agreed, but with one condition. Full repayment. Not a penny less. Then you'll get your car back, which meant my parents had 72 hours to come up with $55,000. When we laid out the deal at my parents' kitchen table, their faces crumbled. $55,000? Mom gasped. Where are we supposed to get that? You mentioned a home equity loan, I reminded them coolly. Or sell some investments. This isn't my problem anymore. It's yours. Dad wrung his hands. We could maybe manage 40. Not good enough, Ryan cut in. His voice was low, dangerous. This isn't a negotiation. You stole my car. You forged papers. You'll pay the full amount, or I file charges. Then I turned to Emily, who had finally dragged herself home early from her cruise, still dripping entitlement. You're going to contribute too, I told her sharply. $10,000. From your savings. Don't even argue. Her eyes widened. Why me? I didn't sell the car. I laughed bitterly. No, you just manipulated them into doing it. Actions have consequences, Emily. For everyone. Between the equity loan, Mom's jewelry collection, and Emily's savings, they scraped it together. But Ryan wasn't done. One more thing, he said firmly. A notarized apology. Signed by all of you. A written promise that you'll never interfere with Caroline's or my property again. Mom bristled, but Dad sagged in defeat. Fine, he muttered. We'll sign. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. For once, they weren't in control. The apartment meeting was like sitting in the middle of a storm. My parents sat on one side of the room, pale and exhausted. Ryan and I on the other, calm but unrelenting. And then there was Emily, arms crossed, her face twisted in teenage defiance despite being 24 years old. When we explained the repayment plan, Emily exploded. Why am I being punished? She shouted. I didn't sell the stupid car. That was Mom and Dad. I leaned forward, my voice sharp. No, Emily. You just whined about being left out until they sold a car to fund your champagne cruise. Don't play the victim now. Her eyes flashed. "You've always hated me. You're just jealous because Mom and Dad love me more." The room went silent. Even my parents looked stunned. I stared at her for a long moment. "Is that really what you think? That they love you more?" Emily's voice wavered, the bravado crumbling. "Well, they've always given me more. They've always protected me. They never made me work as hard as you. And look where that's gotten you," I said quietly. "You're 24 years old, still depending on Mom and Dad to clean up your messes. That's not love, Emily. That's enabling. And it's ruined you." Mom started to protest, but Dad raised a hand, something he never did. His voice was heavy, almost broken. "Caroline's right." Mom whipped her head toward him. "Richard." "No." His tone was firm. "We thought we were protecting Emily. We thought we were doing right by giving her everything. But all we've done is make her helpless. And Caroline, we failed you too. We dismissed you. We ignored your passions. We never gave you the respect you earned." Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. This wasn't about sympathy. It was about truth. For the first time in years, my father was actually seeing me, really seeing me. And for the first time, my family was forced to confront the favoritism that had poisoned us all along. The room was thick with silence. Ugly. Necessary. That night marked the beginning of something new, not forgiveness, not yet, but the first crack in the walls my family had built around the lies they lived in. The next week was a blur of paperwork, signatures, and uncomfortable silences. My parents secured a home equity loan. Emily drained $10,000 from her savings, whining the whole way. Mom sold off pieces of her jewelry, the same one she used to flaunt at family gatherings. And then came the hardest part, the apology. We gathered in Alicia's law office, the lawyer overseeing the settlement. Ryan sat next to me, calm but firm, while my parents shuffled in with Emily trailing behind, sulking like a child who'd been grounded. The apology had been drafted in advance, a notarized letter acknowledging the theft, the forgery, and the betrayal. A written promise that they would never again touch my property, Ryan's property, or anyone else's without consent. Mom's hands shook as she held the pen. Her lips trembled. "Do we really have to sign this?" she whispered. Ryan's voice cut like steel. "Not as much as you had to commit fraud. But here we are." She swallowed hard, pressed the pen to the page, and signed. Dad followed, his face lined with shame. Emily rolled her eyes but scrawled her name too. For the first time in my life, I saw something new on their faces, not pride, not superiority, but humility. The $55,000 was wired to Peter Donovan, and Ryan's replica Corvette was returned, thankfully undamaged. The crisis was resolved on paper. But in our hearts, nothing would ever be the same. That night, as Ryan and I drove away in my real Corvette, the authentic '69 Stingray still gleaming like a dream, I felt lighter, but not whole. Yes, I still had my car. Yes, justice had been served. But my relationship with my family had been cracked wide open. And yet, maybe that was the first step toward rebuilding. Because for the first time, my parents couldn't deny the truth. They had crossed a line so deep, it forced us all to finally face the rot beneath the surface. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only way healing could ever begin. A month later, I sat at my parents' dining table again. Same house, same chairs, but nothing felt the same. Dad placed a platter of grilled chicken on the table, his hands rough from the weekend construction job he'd picked up to help pay off the loan. Mom followed with a salad, her diamond rings gone, sold to cover restitution. Emily arrived late, hair its natural brown, no designer sunglasses, working an entry-level job she could barely stand. It was awkward, quiet, but different. For once, Dad didn't brush off my passion for cars. In fact, he surprised me. "George is thinking of selling his old pickup," he said, clearing his throat. "I was wondering, maybe you could help me restore it. I'd like to learn." It wasn't just about a truck. It was his way of reaching out, of finally trying to understand me. Mom, too, had changed. She handed Ryan a framed document, the notarized apology hung in glass. "A reminder," she said softly, "that boundaries matter, that respect matters." I'm still learning. Even Emily seemed different. Stripped of her easy ride, she was beginning to see life for what it really was. "Congrats again on the promotion," she said to me, her voice free of bitterness for the first time. As I sat there watching these small but powerful shifts, I realized something. Sometimes the ugliest betrayals can tear down the walls hiding long-buried truths. And once those walls crack, light finally gets in. Later that night, driving my Stingray along Lake Michigan with Ryan beside me, the engine's purr felt different. Lighter. Almost. Forgiving. The car was still my connection to Grandpa, still proof of my hard work. But now it symbolized something bigger. My refusal to let anyone, even family, cross my boundaries without consequence. Because here's the truth. Family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Family doesn't mean turning a blind eye to betrayal. Family means respect, or it means nothing. So if you've ever had relatives treat your possessions, your dreams, or your boundaries like they don't matter, remember this. It's not selfish to say no. It's survival. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to family who crossed the line? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this story hit home for you. Because in the end, protecting your worth isn't cruel. It's the greatest gift you can give to yourself and to those who truly love you.